My name is Fiona Clark, and the moment my brother called me a freeloader in front of an entire ballroom, I felt something inside me finally snap. I was standing near the edge of the room, holding a cheap glass of champagne I hadn't even paid for myself, surrounded by people who didn't know me, but suddenly thought they did. Real estate investors, city council guests, my parents' friends, strangers in tailored suits who would never remember my name, but would remember the word he used. Freeloader. He said it with a smile, like it was a joke, like it was obvious, like it had always been true. And the worst part? No one stopped him. Not my mother, not my father, not even my little sister. They just stood there, frozen, while my brother lifted his glass and toasted his own success, using my humiliation as the punchline. That night didn't just embarrass me, it erased me. 5 years later, I'm standing outside the same house in Orlando where we grew up. The same driveway, the same trimmed hedges, the same front door where I once waited for approval that never came. But I'm not here to ask for anything anymore. I'm here because some chapters don't close on their own. They wait for you to come back and finish them properly. Growing up, the Clark family looked perfect from the outside. Nice house, good schools, stable careers. Dinner on the table every night. Inside, though, everything revolved around Ian Clark, my older brother, the golden child, the one who made it. By 35, Ian was already a real estate name in Orlando. Billboards with his face on them, interviews in local business magazines, charity galas where he shook hands and handed out business cards like blessings. He spoke loudly, confidently, and everyone listened. My parents built their lives around him. My mother, Janet, spent years working as a bank manager before retiring early. Thanks, she liked to remind people, to smart investments Ian helped us understand. My father, Dennis, was a former civil engineer who believed conflict was something you avoided by staying quiet long enough. He read golf magazines. He watched cable news. He nodded at whatever Ian said. And then there was my younger sister, Paige. Smart, gentle, 25 and still trying to figure out who she was allowed to be. And me? I was the problem. I loved writing. Not as a hobby, not as a cute phase. I loved it the way people love oxygen. Stories were the only place I ever felt like I existed without permission. In high school, my English teacher used to slide books onto my desk after class. "Your voice matters, Fiona," she'd whisper, like it was something fragile that needed protecting. I believed her. Ian never did. To him, value was measurable. Square footage, sale prices, profit margins. Anything else was a waste. "You're too smart to throw your life away," he used to say, which always meant, "You're too smart not to do what I want." So I did what my family expected. I went to the University of Central Florida. I got a finance degree I never wanted. I graduated at 22, holding a diploma that felt like a lie. And then I quietly started writing. I worked part-time at a bookstore. I wrote for a small local blog. I tried to build something that felt like mine. Ian hated every second of it. At family dinners, he'd talk about his latest condo project, then turn to me with a smirk. "So, still playing with stories?" Everyone would laugh politely. My mother would change the subject. My father would stare at his plate. Paige would look at me like she wanted to apologize for all of them. The message was clear. As long as I didn't openly embarrass the family, I was tolerated. Until the barbecue. Ian hosted it himself, right in our parents' backyard. Caterers, live music, business associates everywhere. I was helping carry drinks when he cornered me near the patio, voice just loud enough to carry. "You're mooching, Fiona," he said. "Living off Mom and Dad while the rest of us actually build something?" The tray shook in my hands. People stopped talking. My mother whispered, "He's had too much wine." My father stared at the ground. No one told him to stop. That night, sitting alone in my childhood bedroom, I understood something I had been avoiding for years. Staying meant shrinking. Staying meant always defending my worth to people who had already decided I didn't have any. So I left. I didn't announce it. I didn't argue. I didn't ask permission. I quit my bookstore job, packed one suitcase, bought a bus ticket to Tallahassee. No money, no safety net, just a quiet, burning refusal to disappear. And that was only the beginning. Tallahassee didn't welcome me with anything dramatic. No skyline, no big opportunities waiting at the bus station. Just heat, cracked sidewalks, and the kind of loneliness that hums in your ears when you realize no one knows you here and no one is coming to save you. I rented half a bedroom in a tiny apartment near campus. The paint peeled off the walls. The air conditioner rattled like it might die any minute. My roommate, Maria Wells, was a fashion design student who survived on thrift store finds and pure optimism. She laughed loud, talked fast, and believed dreams were something you chased, not something you apologized for. That alone made her different from my family. I worked mornings at a cafe near the university, steaming milk for students who barely looked up from their phones. Nights, I stopped shelves at a secondhand bookstore that smelled like dust and forgotten ambition. Between shifts, I wrote. On napkins, on my phone, in a notebook I guarded like a secret diary. I didn't tell my parents where I was. I didn't answer my brother's calls. At first, that silence felt powerful. Then, it felt terrifying. Bills stacked up fast. Some weeks, my bank account hovered just above zero. I ate ramen until I couldn't stand the smell anymore. There were nights I lay awake listening to the hum of traffic outside and wondered if Ian had been right. Maybe writing was irresponsible. Maybe freedom was just another word for failure. But every time I sat down to write, something steady returned. I signed up for a free writing workshop at a community center. The chairs were mismatched, the coffee was terrible, but the people were real. Single parents, immigrants, night shift workers who wrote because it was the only place they felt seen. For the first time, I wasn't the disappointment. I was just another voice in the room. That's where I met Nathan Gray. Scruffy hair, permanent 5 o'clock shadow, a guitar case always slung over his shoulder like an extension of his body. He played music at bars for tips and slept on friends' couches when rent got tight. My parents wanted me to go to law school, he told me one night after the workshop. They still think I'm ruining my life. I laughed before I could stop myself. Same, I said. Different dream, same crime. We became each other's witnesses. I read him drafts. He played me unfinished songs. We both understood what it meant to choose something that didn't make sense to anyone else. Still, Tallahassee was survival mode. Every small win came with exhaustion. Every rejection letter landed harder because I had no cushion to fall back on. And then, just when I started to believe I'd escaped my old life, it found me again. It happened at a charity book sale. I was working the register, stacking paperbacks, minding my own business, when I looked up and saw a familiar tailored suit across the room. My stomach dropped. Ian. He stood there like he owned the place, laughing with donors, shaking hands, perfectly at ease. My parents were with him. My mother's polite smile, my father's discomfort. Paige hovering nearby, thinner than I remembered. I tried to disappear into the shelves. Too late. "Well, look who it is," Ian said loudly, walking straight toward me. Heads turned. "Still playing shop clerk?" he asked. "I thought you'd grow out of this by now." My hands shook as I set the books down. "I'm building a life I care about," I said. He laughed. "Building?" He looked around. "This is what building looks like to you?" Then he said it again. Freeloader. Same word, same tone, different city. My mother tried to soften it. "Ian, not here." But she didn't defend me. My father said nothing. Paige looked like she wanted to crawl out of her skin. Something inside me finally hardened. "You don't get to define me," I said, louder than I'd ever spoken to him before. "Not anymore." He leaned in, voice low, sharp, and private. "You ruined your life the moment you walked away from this family." That sentence followed me home. It echoed while I sat on my bed that night, staring at the ceiling fan. It echoed when I opened my laptop. It echoed when I thought about calling my mother, then remembered she had stood there and let it happen. That was the breaking point. Not because he insulted me, but because I finally saw the pattern clearly. My brother didn't need me to fail. He needed me to stay small. And my family, by staying silent, helped him do it. So I made a choice that scared me more than leaving Orlando ever had. I cut them off. Blocked numbers, deleted emails, no explanations. For the first time in my life, I chose peace over permission, and I poured everything I had into writing. I joined a more advanced workshop at the local library, led by Stanley Ross, a published author with no patience for excuses. He tore my drafts apart with red ink and brutal honesty. "This is safe," he said once, tapping a page. "Dig deeper." So I did. I wrote about baristas, dishwashers, immigrant families, people whose lives were dismissed because they didn't look impressive on paper. People like me. One story got accepted by a local magazine. The check was only $200. I framed the email anyway. Because, for the first time, I earned money doing the thing my brother said was worthless. And I realized something quietly powerful. Every word I published took a little bit of his voice out of my head. I didn't know it yet, but the life I was building was already stronger than the one he tried to trap me in. And I was just getting started. The first real decision didn't come with fireworks. It came with exhaustion. I was 26, sitting at my tiny desk in Tallahassee at 2 a.m, staring at a blinking cursor while my hands ached from another double shift. Coffee stains on my notebook. Rent due in 5 days. $43 left in my checking account. And for the first time since I'd left Orlando, I asked myself a dangerous question. How long can I live like this? Writing was no longer just a dream. It was work. And work without stability can break even the strongest conviction. That night, I made a decision that changed everything. I stopped treating writing like something I squeezed into the cracks of my life and started treating it like the core of it. I cut back hours at the cafe. I left the bookstore job. I picked up freelance editing online to cover the gap. It was risky, but so was staying half committed forever. Stanley noticed the shift immediately. "You're writing like someone who knows what she wants now," he said after a workshop. "That's the difference between hobbyists and professionals." Through Stanley, I met Heidi Quinn, an editor at a regional literary journal. She had sharp instincts, sharper feedback, and no interest in flattery. "You don't need to impress," she told me. "You need to tell the truth." Under her guidance, I started pitching nationally. Most outlets said no. Some didn't reply at all. But one piece, about a migrant dishwasher sending half his paycheck home every month, hit. $500. Then another one landed. Then another. The money was still inconsistent, but something had shifted. Editors recognized my name. Emails came back faster. Readers left comments saying, "This felt like my life." I wasn't invisible anymore. The plan became clear. I saved everything I could. I applied to fellowships. I said yes to unpaid panels if they meant exposure. And when an acceptance email arrived from a small publisher in San Francisco, my hands shook so badly I had to sit down. They wanted to turn my essays into a book. I moved across the country with 2 suitcases and a laptop. San Francisco was overwhelming in all the best ways. Fog, noise, energy, people who talked about ideas instead of expectations. I worked harder than ever, but for the first time, it felt aligned. The book launch was small. 1 bookstore, fold-out chairs, a borrowed microphone. But when I read aloud and saw people nod, really nod, I understood something deeply. This wasn't revenge. It was proof. Reviews followed, then invitations, then speaking gigs. I quit freelancing and wrote full-time. I started saving, real savings, not just survival money. At 28, I signed my first major magazine contract. At 30, my book broke into niche bestseller lists. And at 33, I received an invitation I didn't expect. My brother's company was hosting its 10-year anniversary gala in Orlando. The card was glossy, expensive, smug. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to burn it. Another part knew exactly why it had arrived. Ian had noticed, and whether he meant it as an olive branch or a power move didn't matter anymore. Because this time, I wasn't walking into his world empty-handed. I packed my book, my awards, my calm. Not to prove anything, but to finish something. Walking into that hotel ballroom in Orlando felt unreal. Crystal chandeliers, black tie guests, champagne flowing like money had never been a problem for anyone in the room. And at the center of it all stood Ian Clark. Confident, loud, soaking in attention like oxygen. 10 years of his company. 10 years of being celebrated. My parents stood nearby, exactly where I remembered them. My mother smiling too hard, my father hovering in silence. Paige was there too, dressed in something conservative and uncomfortable, like she was playing a role written by someone else. When Ian saw me, his smile faltered for half a second. Then it returned, sharp and performative. "Well, this is unexpected," he said loudly. "Did someone lose their invite?" A few people laughed. I didn't. I walked toward him calmly, placed my book on the cocktail table between us, and looked him straight in the eyes. "Congratulations," I said. 10 years is impressive." He glanced down at the cover, confused. "What's this?" he asked. "My work," I replied. "The thing you said would never matter." I pulled out copies of magazine features, an award plaque. I didn't wave them around. I didn't rush. I let the silence do the work. Guests leaned in, Whispers spread. Ian scoffed. So, you finally turned scribbling into a side hustle. Cute. That's when I felt it. The old fear try to surface. And then it didn't. This isn't a hobby, I said, voice steady. It's a career. One I built without your approval, or your money, or your permission. His smile tightened. You always exaggerate, he said. You left. You struggled. That was your choice. Yes, I replied. And so was what you did to me. The room quieted. I took a breath. You called me a freeloader. You told people I was wasting my life. You tried to scare me into obedience. And you did it because you needed me smaller than you. Ian stepped closer, his tone dropping. You're making a scene. Stop before you embarrass yourself. I met his gaze. No, I said. I'm done being quiet so you can feel powerful. My mother gasped softly. My father shifted, uncomfortable. Paige stared at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. I didn't come back for an apology, I continued. I came back to say this ends here. You don't get access to my life anymore. You don't get to rewrite my story. Ian's jaw clenched. You think people care about feelings? He snapped. This is business. And this, I said, gesturing around us, is reputation. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I turned to Paige. You don't owe anyone your future, I said gently. Not even him. If medicine is what you want, chase it. I'll help, without strings. Tears filled her eyes. She nodded. That moment cracked something open. Ian saw it. You're turning her against me now? He hissed. She was never yours to control, I said. And then I walked away. I didn't wait for applause. I didn't stay for explanations. In the weeks that followed, consequences arrived quietly. Partners questioned Ian's leadership. Investors noticed his arrogance. Deals stalled. Trust thinned. Meanwhile, my life expanded. I launched a scholarship fund for young women pursuing creative careers, women who'd been told their dreams were impractical, indulgent, or embarrassing. Paige enrolled in med school on her own terms. My parents kept their distance, and for the first time, that distance felt peaceful. Here's what I learned. You don't win by becoming louder than the people who dismiss you. You win by becoming undeniable. If you've ever been overworked, underestimated, or treated like your worth depended on someone else's approval, this is your reminder. You don't need permission to choose yourself. You just need the courage to stop shrinking. And when you do, everything changes.